Welcome to another deep dive with us today.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going back to November 22nd, 1963, the day JFK was assassinated.
Right.
And we've got this stack of articles here from the Fourth Decade magazine,
Okay.
the May 1995 issue, and they offer a lot of interesting insights into what happened that day.
Yeah, it's amazing how even, decades later, new details and new kind of interpretations about the JFK assassination keep popping up.
Absolutely.
These articles are a good reminder that history is rarely like, black and white. It's more like we're piecing together a puzzle.
Yeah, and sometimes the puzzle pieces don't quite fit.
Right.
Like this one, the Witter document.
Mhm.
The FBI sat on a 14-page document about this guy, Donald Witter,
Okay.
Jack Ruby's auto mechanic,
Right.
for almost a year, and they claimed it was like top secret national security stuff.
Wow. And what was it?
Turns out it was just Witter's arrest records.
Really?
Yeah, like why would those be considered a threat to national security?
Right. It makes you wonder if maybe they were more concerned about hiding a connection between Ruby and Witter than they were about national security.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely raises some questions about, what else might be hidden.
For sure.
Okay, so let's talk about the autopsy.
Okay.
This article, Blaming the Victims, Kennedy Family Control over the Bethesda Autopsy, it basically says that, the idea that the Kennedy family interfered to cover up JFK's Addison's disease, it tackles that whole thing.
This article, it kind of challenges the common assumptions by bringing in all these different accounts from the people that were there.
Right.
The autopsy doctors, the Secret Service agents. And when you listen to their stories, they don't really match up when it comes to, restrictions that were maybe placed on the examination.
Right. It's like trying to solve a mystery, but you only have like half the pieces.
Exactly.
And then there's this whole thing with the adrenal glands.
Mm-hmm.
This Dr. Robert Carney, who helped with the autopsy, he claims that JFK's adrenal glands were totally missing. Yeah, not just left out of the report, but like gone.
That they were removed.
That's what he says.
I mean, if that's true, that really throws the whole autopsy report into question.
Yeah.
Were they trying to hide evidence of a medical condition that maybe played a role in the assassination, or was there something more going on there?
It makes you wonder what else we don't know about what happened at Bethesda.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, now this next article is kind of a wild ride.
Okay.
Bits and pieces. A Green Beret on the periphery of the JFK assassination.
Okay.
It tells the story of Daniel Marvin, this guy who claims he was involved in things related to the assassination. And his story is full of all these crazy encounters with like CIA guys and organized crime figures.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It does. It really makes you think about this whole darker side to the assassination.
Yeah.
He even claims that he was asked to kill this Navy officer, William Bruce Pitzer,
What?
who supposedly had information about the JFK autopsy that could blow the whole conspiracy wide open.
Oh.
And here's the crazy part. Pitzer's death was later ruled a suicide.
Mm.
But his family, they never believed it.
Oh, wow. So they think there was foul play.
Yeah, they think he was silenced to protect the conspiracy, and it makes you wonder how far did this thing really go?
Yeah, Marvin's story, if it's true, suggests that, the impact of the assassination,
Right.
it went way beyond Dallas.
Right. It's like it reached out and touched all these other people's lives in really dark ways.
And it shows, this potential effort to control the narrative
Yeah.
around the assassination.
Yeah. And speaking of controlling the narrative, let's talk about Dale Myers
Okay.
and his 3D recreation of the Zapruder film.
Right.
The article, Secrets of a Homicide, Dale Myers' deception in 3D takes a really hard look at his work.
Yeah.
And his work got a lot of criticism because of how he went about creating it.
Okay.
He only used keyframes from the film at certain intervals, and that means he could have missed important details that were in the original footage.
Right. And the article points out, specific instances where Myers' interpretation of the film doesn't match up with what we see in the actual Zapruder film.
Exactly.
Like, for example, there are differences in how JFK's body moves and the timing of the shots.
It really makes you want to watch the Zapruder film and compare it to Myers' version.
Yeah, it's a good exercise to see, how different people can interpret the same evidence and how those interpretations can really shape our understanding of what happened.
Okay, so let's move on to the Assassination Records Review Board.
Okay, the ARRB.
Yeah, that's the group that was tasked with declassifying and releasing documents related to the assassination.
Right.
And the article, March Madness at the ARRB, it basically talks about all the roadblocks they faced.
Yeah, they had a lot of pushback from intelligence agencies like the FBI and CIA.
Oh, yeah, they really didn't want to let go of some of that information.
Right, and for example, the FBI tried to exclude something called source files. And see references from the documents that the ARRB could review.
What are the...
Well, source files often have information about people who gave information to the FBI.
Okay.
And see references can point to other documents or files that are related to a topic.
So basically they were trying to hide stuff.
Yeah, it's possible they were trying to keep crucial pieces of the puzzle hidden.
It makes you wonder how much we still don't know about the assassination.
For sure.
And how important the ARRB's work was in, bringing some of those secrets to light.
Absolutely. Their work shows how hard it can be to get the government to be transparent about information.
Especially when it comes to something as big as the JFK assassination.
Exactly.
It's crazy how much debate and discussion there is about this, even after all these years.
Yeah, it's definitely captured the public imagination.
Okay, so for our last segment, let's look at these letters to the editor.
Okay.
The letters to the editor section in the fourth decade, it's like a gold mine.
Hmm.
It really shows all these different opinions and interpretations of the JFK assassination from researchers and just people who are really interested in it.
It's like a snapshot of the ongoing debate about what really happened.
Yeah, you've got everything from people arguing about the authenticity of the evidence to people speculating about the roles of certain individuals, and of course, lots of conspiracy theories.
Of course.
These letters show how deeply people have gone in their research. They're analyzing tiny details in photographs and arguing about the trajectory of bullets. It's incredible.
It's amazing the level of detail that people have gone into.
Yeah, one letter I saw, it focused on Marilyn Sitzman's account of this black couple near the retaining wall.
Oh, yeah.
She initially said they were sitting on a bench, but that didn't match up with later photographs.
Right.
But then in a later interview, she clarified that the couple had actually moved to the corner of the wall as the motorcade got closer. Which, it just shows how eyewitness accounts can change over time and how they can be influenced by information that comes out later.
That's a good reminder to be careful about taking any single account as, the absolute truth.
Right, especially in a case like this. There are just so many different perspectives and interpretations. It's like everyone has their own theory about what happened.
Yeah, it really speaks to the enduring power of the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
And, its impact on the American psyche.
Absolutely.
It's a mystery that continues to fascinate and intrigue us.
Yeah, it's one of those events that just stays with you.
For sure. And it makes you think about, the nature of truth and how hard it can be to find.
Definitely. Yeah, it's like this giant puzzle where the pieces don't really fit, and you're never sure if you have all the pieces in the first place.
Yeah, definitely a puzzle with a lot of missing pieces.
Right.
And some of these letters in this issue of the fourth decade, they bring up even more questions about Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Several letters talk about the possibility that Oswald was actually framed for the assassination.
Interesting.
They point to inconsistencies with that palm print they found on the rifle.
Oh, the one at the Texas School Book Depository?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wait.
Some researchers think it might have been planted there after the fact.
How could they do that?
Well, they talk about discrepancies in the police reports and the photographs.
Okay.
Like one letter mentions this photo where the cardboard with the palm print on it looks like it was moved from one box to another.
Wow, that's a pretty big red flag.
Right. And then there's also the question of whether the rifle they found at the depository was even the one Oswald owned.
Wait, are you saying there might have been two rifles?
Well, that's what another letter suggests. They look at this photo of Oswald holding his rifle.
Okay.
And the sling swivel in the photo, it's on the bottom of the barrel, but the rifle from the depository, the swivel's on the side.
Wow, that's a huge difference. I mean, if those are two different rifles, that really changes things.
Yeah, it blows the official story out of the water.
It makes you think maybe someone really went to a lot of trouble to make it look like Oswald did it.
Yeah, and these letters, along with the articles we've talked about, they all kind of remind us that even the things we think are facts, they can be challenged if we look closely enough.
Right. And speaking of challenging assumptions, there's this really interesting letter that looks at the name Oswald used when he went to the Soviet Union.
Oh, Alexei James Hadel.
Right. That name, it's often overlooked, but this letter says it might tell us something about Oswald's real loyalties.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. Oswald's middle name, Harvey. It was actually a tribute to this Confederate general, Harvey Lee. And his brother was named Robert Edward Lee Oswald, after another Confederate general.
So Oswald, who was supposedly a communist sympathizer, he chose a name that honored Confederate figures.
Exactly. The letter suggests that maybe Oswald was more connected to intelligence agency than we realized. Maybe he was even a double agent.
Wow. That's a wild theory, but I guess it would explain some of the weird stuff about him.
It definitely adds another layer of intrigue to this whole thing.
Right.
It makes you wonder, was Oswald set up to take the fall for the assassination? Maybe his middle name was a clue, a signal to people in the know.
Okay, now my mind is officially blown.
It's amazing to think about all the different possibilities.
Yeah.
And another thing that comes up in these letters is the role of the FBI.
Mm.
A lot of the letters echo the same concerns from that article about the ARBB, suggesting that the FBI might have been actively trying to control the investigation and keep information from getting out.
Like those source files and C references they tried to keep from the ARB?
Exactly. Those files could have all sorts of explosive information, about people involved in the investigation leads that were never followed up on, maybe even evidence that was destroyed.
And some letters even say that the FBI might have been involved in destroying evidence.
I'll go what?
That note Oswald gave to the FBI before the assassination.
Oh, wow. I mean, destroying evidence, that always raises questions.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what they were trying to hide.
It definitely paints a disturbing picture of the FBI's potential role in all of this.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful institutions, they can be compromised.
Right.
And we should always question the official narrative, especially in a case as huge as this one.
Especially when there's so much at stake.
Right after reading all this stuff, it's hard not to feel like we've barely scratched the surface of what really happened in Dallas.
And you know what? There's one more letter that brings in a whole new angle.
Okay.
It's about Lieutenant Commander William Bruce Pitzer.
Pitzer, that's the Navy officer Daniel Marvin, the Green Beret, said he was asked to assassinate.
That's right.
And this letter connects it to the JFK assassination.
Remember how Marvin said that Pitzer supposedly had information about the JFK autopsy that could expose the whole conspiracy?
Yeah, and Pitzer's death was ruled a suicide, but his family doesn't believe it.
That's right. They think there's more to the story.
What does this letter say?
It says that Pitzer wasn't just any Navy officer. He worked at Bethesda Naval Hospital.
Right, but that's it. The same hospital where they did JFK's autopsy?
Yeah, the very same.
So are you saying there's a connection between Pitzer's death and the JFK autopsy?
Well, the letter doesn't say that directly, but it does make you wonder, why would someone want to kill a Navy officer who worked at the hospital where they did the autopsy for the president?
It's almost too much to process. Are we talking conspiracy theories here?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily a conspiracy theory. We know Pitzer was in a position to maybe have access to sensitive information about the autopsy.
And his death, even though it was officially ruled a suicide, it's still really suspicious, especially with his family's doubts and what his widow said.
Right, his widow, Joyce Pitzer. She actually says in the letter that she believes her husband had parts of the autopsy that someone wanted destroyed.
Parts of the autopsy? What does that even mean?
It could be anything, photographs, medical records, maybe even physical evidence. We just don't know.
But the fact that his widow thinks something was being hidden, that's pretty significant.
It is, and it goes back to what Marvin said about Pitzer having information that could expose a conspiracy.
Yeah.
This letter and Marvin's story together, they create a really unsettling picture. It suggests that whoever might have been involved in covering things up, they were willing to go to extreme lengths to protect their secrets.
It's a chilling thought.
It is, and it brings up even more questions about what happened that day in Dallas and how far the cover-up went.
It's like we're peeling back layers of an onion, and with each layer, the mystery gets deeper and deeper.
Yeah, it's like we're looking at this giant tapestry, but with these huge chunks ripped out of it, and we're left trying to figure out what the whole picture looked like.
And it makes you wonder if those pieces were ripped out on purpose, to hide something.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this possible conspiracy, a Navy officer who might have had information that could bring the whole thing down, and a Green Beret who was maybe asked to get rid of him.
Right. It's a lot to unpack.
But here's something that really got to me. The article mentions that Floyd Boring, this guy, who was an assistant special agent in charge within the Secret Service, he was never interviewed by the Warren Commission.
Or the House Select Committee on Assassinations.
Yeah, like nobody ever talked to him about the assassination.
Wow, that's a huge oversight. I mean, especially considering his role in planning the trip to Texas and all the security stuff that happened that day. Right, he was the one who made the final decision on the motorcade route.
Exactly. You'd think his testimony would have been super important for understanding how everything went down.
Yeah, like what were the security preparations like? Were there any concerns that were raised before the trip?
All that stuff, yeah.
But instead, he was just ignored.
Well, the article hints that there might be more to it.
Oh, really?
It talks about how Boring was really close with Lyndon B. Johnson.
Who, of course, became president after Kennedy was killed.
Exactly.
So are you saying that maybe Boring was protected to keep Johnson or his administration from getting blamed?
It's definitely a possibility. The article doesn't come right out and say that, but it makes you think about, potential conflicts of interest and how power dynamics might have influenced the investigations.
It's kind of scary to think that what we know about the JFK assassination might be tainted by, you know, politics and people trying to protect themselves.
Yeah, it really highlights the importance of digging deeper, looking beyond the official story, and considering different perspectives.
Right, like those articles and letters from the fourth decade, they show us that history is rarely simple.
It's messy and complicated.
It really is. It's like trying to untangle a giant knot. You
Huh.
pull on one thread and it just creates more knots and tangles.
I think that's a great analogy for this whole thing. We've got withheld documents, conflicting stories, possible cover-ups, and all these people with their own agendas.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is, but it's also really important to keep asking questions and looking for the truth.
Right, the JFK assassination was a turning point in our history.
Absolutely.
And understanding what happened, it's crucial to understanding who we are as a country.
I completely agree.
So what's the biggest thing you take away from all of this? What really stood out to you?
Honestly, it's how many unanswered questions there still are. The missing adrenal glands, the problems with the autopsy report, the evidence that was hidden or destroyed. It all suggests that there was a cover-up and a big one. And it's a cover-up that's still going on.
It makes you question everything you thought you knew about that day.
It's both fascinating and terrifying at the same time.
But it also shows us that we can't just accept the official story. We have to keep pushing for the truth, demanding answers, and holding people accountable.
Absolutely. The legacy of the JFK assassination demands that we never stop questioning, never stop searching for answers, and never let the truth be silenced.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thanks for having me on to talk about all this. It's been a great discussion.
Yeah, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive. Thanks for joining us.